The text message that destroyed my marriage arrived at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't supposed to see it, but Amanda's phone buzzed on the nightstand while she slept peacefully beside me, completely unaware that her secret was about to explode in both our faces. Can't wait to feel you again tomorrow, Damien. My blood turned to ice water as I stared at those 8 words glowing on her screen. Damien Crawford, her boss, the same arrogant CEO who'd shaken my hand at the company Christmas party just 4 months ago, telling me what a lucky man I was to have Amanda. Yeah, real lucky. I set the phone down carefully, my hands trembling with rage. Amanda stirred beside me, her auburn hair spread across the pillow like a copper waterfall. How perfectly ironic. My wife was sleeping with the devil, and I'd been too blind to see it. The signs had been there for months, late nights at the office, mysterious phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. New lingerie that never seemed to make an appearance in our bedroom. The way she'd started criticizing everything about me. My job as a senior network security engineer. My clothes. My lack of what she called real ambition. "You're stuck in middle management, Max," she'd said just last week during one of our increasingly frequent arguments. "Damien says men like you are content with mediocrity," Damien says. It all made sense now. I slipped out of bed and padded to my home office, my mind racing. 15 years of marriage, and this is what it had come to. My wife was screwing her boss, probably planning to leave me for his money and status while I played the role of the oblivious husband. But Maxwell Hudson wasn't as oblivious as everyone thought. The next morning, Amanda bounced into the kitchen like a teenager, humming some pop song while she made her coffee. She was practically glowing, and I knew it wasn't because of me. "Good morning, honey," she chirped, not even looking in my direction. "I'll be late again tonight. Big presentation for the board." "Another one?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "That's the 4th this month." She finally glanced at me, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, annoyance. It's a crucial time for Crawford Digital, Max. Some of us actually care about advancing our careers. There it was, the subtle dig, the implication that I was some kind of failure because I'd chosen stability over corporate ladder climbing. As a senior network security engineer at TechCore Solutions, I made good money and had real responsibility. I managed a team of 12 engineers, handled multi-million-dollar security implementations, and had the respect of my peers. But apparently, that wasn't enough for Amanda anymore. "Right," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "Well, good luck with your presentation." After she left, I sat in our modern kitchen, surrounded by the pristine decor Amanda had insisted on for our upper-middle-class suburban home in Uwarski, Millfield Heights. Everything was white marble and stainless steel and cold, just like our marriage had become. We'd bought this house 3 years ago when my promotion to senior engineer came through, and Amanda had thrown herself into decorating it like a showplace. Now I understood why. She'd been preparing for a different kind of life all along. My phone buzzed. Fletcher, my best friend, and the owner of Murphy's Tavern downtown. "Lunch today? You sound like you need a drink." He wasn't wrong. Fletcher had this uncanny ability to sense trouble, probably from 20 years of bartending and listening to people's problems. We'd been friends since college, and he was the only person who'd called out Amanda's behavior changes before I'd even noticed them myself. I met Fletcher at his tavern around noon. The place was mostly empty except for a few regulars nursing their liquid lunches. Murphy's was an honest working-class bar in the older part of town. Nothing like the trendy gastropubs that had sprouted up in our neighborhood. Fletcher took one look at my face and poured me a whiskey without being asked. "All right, spill it," he said, leaning against the bar. "You look like someone ran over your dog." "Amanda is having an affair," I said quietly. Fletcher's eyebrows shot up, though he didn't look entirely surprised. "Jesus, Max, are you sure?" I told him about the text message, about all the signs I'd been ignoring. Fletcher listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling my glass. As a bartender, he'd heard every variation of this story, but as my friend, he let me work through it at my own pace. "Damien Crawford," he said finally. "Yeah, I know that name. Real piece of work from what I hear. Thinks he's God's gift to corporate America." "You know him?" "Not personally, but his type comes in here sometimes during the business lunch crowd. Rich guys slumming it, thinking they're better than everyone else." Fletcher wiped down a glass thoughtfully. I've heard stories about him and his extracurricular activities from some of the women who work downtown. What kind of stories? The kind where he's got a reputation for sleeping with his employees, married ones especially. Apparently, he gets off on the power trip. There was talk about a harassment complaint a few years back, but it got buried somehow. My stomach churned. Amanda wasn't Damien's first conquest, and she probably wouldn't be his last. She was just another notch on his executive bedpost. "What are you going to do?" Fletcher asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm not going down without a fight." The next few days passed in a haze of surveillance and suspicion. I started paying closer attention to Amanda's routines, her phone calls, her explanations for being late. The woman I'd been married to for 15 years was becoming a stranger, and the stranger was careless. She'd disappear into the bathroom with her phone for 20-minute calls from her sister Monica. She started working out more, buying expensive new clothes, getting her hair done twice a week. When I asked about the sudden interest in fitness, she claimed it was for a new company wellness program. "Damien's really pushing for a healthier corporate culture," she said, adjusting her sports bra in our bedroom mirror. "He thinks it improves productivity and team morale," Damien thinks. Every conversation somehow circled back to what her boss thought, what he wanted, what he expected from his team. I was being erased from my own marriage, one Damien says, at a time. The final piece of evidence came the following Wednesday evening. Amanda had left a blazer in the hamper, and when I picked it up to sort the laundry, I caught a whiff of expensive cologne, not mine. And there on the collar was a smudge of lipstick in a shade Amanda never wore, burgundy, deep, rich burgundy. I sat on our bedroom floor, holding that blazer like evidence in a murder case, which, in a way, it was. The murder of my marriage. I'd been hoping I was wrong about the affair, that my paranoia was just the product of a stressful work period and too many late-night overthinking sessions. But here was proof, literally staining my wife's clothes. That weekend, while Amanda was at what she claimed was a mandatory team-building retreat, I did something I'd never imagined myself capable of. I hired a private investigator. Jameson Investigations was a small firm downtown, recommended by one of my IT colleagues who would use them during his own messy divorce. The owner, retired police detective Carol Jameson, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in infidelity cases. 28 years on the force, she told me during our initial consultation. Seen every variation of cheating spouse you can imagine. Your wife's behavior pattern fits the classic profile. Increased attention to appearance, secretive phone use, unexplained absences, and emotional distance from the marriage. I gave her Amanda's schedule, Damien's company information, and a retainer fee that made my stomach hurt. But I needed to know the truth, needed documentation if this was heading toward divorce court. "Give me 3 weeks," Carol said. "I'll get you everything you need." While Carol worked her investigation, I started doing my own research on Damien Crawford. What I found painted a picture of a serial predator who'd built his career on charm and manipulation. Crawford Digital Solutions was a mid-sized regional firm, specializing in marketing automation, with about 280 employees across 3 offices. Damien had founded the company 12 years ago after leaving a larger corporation under circumstances that were never fully explained in the business press. The official story was that he wanted to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities, but reading between the lines of various industry articles, it sounded more like he'd been pushed out. More interesting was his personal life. Married for 12 years to Victoria Crawford, a former art gallery owner who'd given up her career when they moved to our city. No kids, big house in Sherwood Estates, the most exclusive neighborhood in town. And from the photos I found online, Victoria was stunning, elegant, sophisticated, with an understated beauty that made Amanda's increasingly flashy appearance seem cheap by comparison. But it was Victoria's eyes in those photos that caught my attention. Even when she was smiling at some charity gala or corporate event, there was a sadness there, like she knew exactly what kind of man she'd married. 3 weeks later, Carol called me with results that exceeded even my worst expectations. "Your wife and Damien Crawford have been meeting at the Grandview Hotel every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon for the past 2 months, she reported during our meeting at her office. "I have photos, video surveillance, credit card records showing he's been paying for the rooms, and receipts for jewelry purchases that match items I've observed your wife wearing. She slid a manila envelope across her desk. Inside were dozens of photographs. Amanda and Damien entering the hotel, kissing in his car, shopping together at boutiques I couldn't afford. There were also printouts showing charges on Damien's corporate credit card for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and jewelry purchases. He's not very careful, Carol noted, using company funds for personal expenses, meeting in public places, making no attempt to vary their routine. Either he's supremely confident in his ability to avoid consequences, or he wants to get caught. Why would he want to get caught? Power play. Some serial cheaters get off on the risk. The idea that they're so untouchable they can flaunt their affairs. Or maybe he's trying to force your wife to leave you by making the relationship semi-public. I stared at the photos, feeling a strange mix of vindication and devastation. I'd been right about the affair, but being right felt like winning a contest I'd never wanted to enter. "There's something else," Carol said carefully. "In the course of surveillance, I've observed Mrs. Crawford on several occasions. She appears to be conducting her own investigation into her husband's activities." "What do you mean?" "She's hired her own private investigator. I recognize the woman she was meeting with, Patricia Wells from Sentinel Investigations. Tori Crawford has been building a case against her husband for months." That revelation hit me like a physical blow. Victoria knew about the affair. She'd known long before I had, and she was planning something. "What should I do with this information?" I asked. Carol leaned back in her chair, studying me with the analytical gaze of someone who'd seen this scenario play out countless times. "That depends on what you want to accomplish. Do you want to confront your wife privately? Do you want to file for divorce immediately? Or do you want to coordinate with Mrs. Crawford?" "Coordinate how?" "Think about it, Mr. Hudson. You have a cheating spouse and evidence of corporate misconduct. Mrs. Crawford has a cheating spouse, and what I suspect is a much deeper investigation into financial irregularities. Together, you could ensure that both your wife and Damien Crawford face appropriate consequences for their actions." The idea intrigued me more than it should have. I'd spent weeks feeling powerless, watching my marriage disintegrate while Amanda and Damien lived in their bubble of arrogant secrecy. The thought of turning the tables, of coordinating a response that would catch them completely off guard, was undeniably appealing. "How would I even contact Mrs. Crawford?" Carol smiled grimly. "Leave that to me. Patricia Wells and I have a professional relationship. I can arrange an introduction if you're interested." I left Carol's office with the envelope of evidence and a decision to make. I could confront Amanda directly, demand explanations, and file for divorce like a civilized adult. Or I could explore the possibility of joining forces with Victoria Crawford and ensuring that justice was served on a much larger scale. As I drove home through our quiet suburban neighborhood, watching neighbors tend their lawns and walk their dogs in blissful ignorance of the drama unfolding behind our pristine facade, I realized I'd already made my choice. Amanda and Damien had been playing a game where only they knew the rules. It was time to change that dynamic completely. The message came 2 days later, just as I was leaving TechCore after a particularly brutal day of debugging network security protocols. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your wife and my husband. We need to talk. Cafe Luna, tomorrow, 2 p.m., come alone. Victoria Crawford." My heart hammered as I read those words. Victoria Crawford knew. The question was, what did she want to do about it? Cafe Luna was a small upscale coffee shop in the Arts District, the kind of place where people had quiet conversations about important things. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a corner table where we could talk without being overheard. I'd spent the previous night imagining what Victoria might look like in person, but when she walked in exactly at 2 p.m., she still took my breath away. She was breathtaking, tall and graceful, with dark hair pulled back in a simple chignon and wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. But it was her eyes that caught my attention, intelligent, calculating, and filled with a cold fury that matched my own. She spotted me immediately and walked over with the confidence of someone who was used to being the most elegant person in any room. "Maxwell Hudson," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I'm Victoria Crawford. Thank you for coming." "Mrs. Crawford," I replied, standing to shake her hand. Her grip was firm, businesslike. "Just Victoria, please. Mrs. Crawford sounds so formal, and we're about to become very informal with each other." She sat down across from me, declining my offer to buy her coffee. For a moment, we just studied each other, two people whose lives had been blown apart by the same betrayal. "How long have you known?" I asked finally. "About Amanda specifically? 3 weeks, about Damien's affairs in general? 5 years. Her voice was calm, controlled, but I could hear the steel underneath. 5 years? You've known for 5 years and never said anything? Victoria's smile was razor sharp. I've been planning, Maxwell, waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity. Your wife just happened to provide both. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, sliding it across the table. Amanda is not his first employee, and she won't be his last, but she might be his most expensive mistake. I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs similar to what Carol had shown me, but also financial documents I hadn't seen before. Bank statements, loan applications, corporate filings that painted a picture of systematic financial misconduct. How did you get all this? I've had Patricia Wells investigating Damien for 8 months, Victoria said matter-of-factly. What started as documentation of infidelity became something much more interesting when we discovered he's been using company funds for personal expenses, including his affairs, hotel rooms, jewelry, expensive dinners, all charged to Crawford Digital's corporate accounts. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just adultery. It was embezzlement, fraud, potentially criminal behavior that could destroy not just Damien's marriage, but his entire business empire. The board doesn't know? I asked. Not yet, but they will, along with the IRS, the State Attorney General's office, and the regional business press. Victoria sipped her coffee delicately. The question is, what role do you want to play in ensuring justice is served? What exactly are you proposing? Complete social and professional destruction, she said without hesitation. Damien's built his reputation on being the perfect CEO, the family man, the pillar of the community. Amanda's climbed the corporate ladder by playing the devoted wife who just happens to be brilliant at her job. What happens when everyone finds out the truth? They lose everything, I said slowly. Exactly. But it has to be done carefully, strategically. A whisper campaign won't work. It has to be undeniable, public, and devastating enough that neither of them can recover from it. I thought about Amanda's smug confidence, her casual cruelty toward me, her obvious belief that she was trading up for a better life. Then I thought about Damien Crawford's arrogant handshake at the Christmas party, his condescending smile when he'd told me how lucky I was. What did you have in mind? Victoria's smile was beautiful and terrifying. The spring charity gala, 6 weeks. From now, everyone who matters in this region will be there. Board members from Crawford Digital, investors, social leaders, media representatives. It's the perfect stage for a very public revelation. And how exactly do we reveal their affair at a charity gala without looking like the bitter, vengeful spouses? We don't reveal it, Victoria said. We let them reveal it themselves. But first, we need to appear to be moving on, happy, united. United how? We need to be seen together, Maxwell, as a couple. Let people draw their own conclusions about why Damien's wife and Amanda's husband are suddenly spending time together. The gossip mill will do half our work for us. The implications hit me immediately. You want us to fake a relationship? I want us to explore a real relationship, she said quietly, and for the first time since she'd sat down, her composure cracked slightly. Even if it starts as strategy, even if it's partly for revenge, because the best way to beat them is to show them that we're better off without them. I studied this remarkable woman across from me. In the space of 30 minutes, she'd outlined a plan that was elegant, ruthless, and completely legal. But more than that, she'd offered me something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Partnership. Real partnership, based on mutual respect and shared intelligence. There's risk involved, I said carefully. If this goes wrong, we could both end up looking vindictive and unstable. If this goes right, Victoria replied, we could both end up free, vindicated, and possibly even happy. The question is whether you're willing to take that risk. I thought about going home to my cold, sterile house, about pretending not to notice Amanda's lies, about spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been if I'd had the courage to fight back. What's the timeline? Victoria pulled out her phone and showed me a calendar. 3 charity events between now and the gala, professional networking mixers, cultural functions, opportunities for us to be seen together, building a relationship. By the time the gala arrives, our presence there together will feel natural, expected. And Damien and Amanda will have no idea what's coming until it's too late to stop it. As I looked at this brilliant, wounded woman who'd turned her pain into a weapon of precise destruction, I realized that my quiet, predictable life was about to become very complicated. And for the first time in months, I was actually looking forward to something. The 6 weeks that followed were a masterclass in strategic deception and genuine connection. Victoria and I attended 3 charity events together, each appearance carefully calculated to build our public narrative while allowing our real relationship to develop organically. The first event was a tech industry mixer, where my expertise in network security actually impressed her. Victoria had been researching cybersecurity solutions for a consulting business she was planning, and our conversation about encryption protocols and data protection turned into a 3-hour discussion that had nothing to do with revenge. The second was an art gallery opening, where Victoria's knowledge of contemporary artists reminded me why she'd given up so much to follow Damien to this city. Watching her analyze a sculpture's composition with passionate intelligence, I realized I was falling for her, independent of our shared mission. By the third event, a wine tasting for the hospital foundation, we were holding hands without thinking about it, finishing each other's sentences, and genuinely enjoying each other's company. Whatever this had started as, it was becoming something real. Meanwhile, Amanda's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She'd started coming home even later, sometimes not until 2 or 3 a.m., with increasingly creative explanations about client dinners and strategy sessions. When I suggested we needed to talk about our marriage, she deflected with renewed criticism of my lack of ambition and hints that maybe we'd grown apart. "Maybe we both need to think about what we really want," she said one evening, clearly testing the waters for a separation that would allow her to pursue Damien more openly. "Maybe we do," I agreed, which seemed to surprise her. The spring charity gala was held at the Riverside Country Club, a regional venue where the local elite gathered to see and be seen. Victoria's membership had gotten us invitations, and she'd insisted on buying me a proper tuxedo for the occasion. "You look dangerous," she said when I picked her up that evening. She was wearing a stunning emerald green gown that turned heads as we walked into the ballroom. That's the idea. The country club was decorated with white flowers and twinkling lights, creating an atmosphere of elegant sophistication. As we made our entrance, I could feel the ripple of attention. Victoria Crawford, one of the most beautiful women in the city's social scene, had arrived with a man who wasn't her husband. We worked the room methodically, greeting board members from Crawford Digital, local business leaders, and the regional press representatives who covered social events. Everyone was polite, curious, and clearly speculating about the absence of Damien and the identity of Victoria's companion. That's when I saw them. Amanda and Damien standing near the silent auction tables, her hand possessively on his arm. Amanda was wearing a red dress that was just a little too tight, a little too revealing for the venue. She looked like she was trying too hard, which next to the understated elegance around us made her appear desperate. Damien, on the other hand, looked every inch the successful CEO in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. But when he spotted Victoria and me across the room, his face went pale. "Showtime," Victoria whispered. We approached them slowly, giving the other guests plenty of time to notice the tension building. Amanda saw us first, her eyes widening in shock when she recognized me. "Max!" she gasped. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Amanda," I said calmly. "You look interesting tonight." Damien had recovered from his initial shock and was now staring at his wife with undisguised fury. "Victoria, what the hell is this?" "This is Maxwell Hudson," Victoria said smoothly. "My date for the evening. Maxwell, I believe you know my husband, Damien." The word husband dripped with disdain. Around us, conversations had stopped. People were openly staring now, sensing drama. "Your date?" Amanda's voice rose an octave. "Max, have you completely lost your mind?" "On the contrary," I replied. "I think I'm finally seeing clearly." Damien stepped forward, his jaw clenched with rage. "I don't know what kind of game you two are playing, but—" "Game?" Victoria interrupted, her voice carrying just enough to be heard by the surrounding guests. "Oh, Damien, this isn't a game. This is me moving on with my life, just like you've been moving on with yours. The implication was crystal clear to everyone within earshot. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I spotted Helen Wakefield, the society columnist from the Tribune, pulling out her phone to take notes. Amanda's face was turning red. "Max, we need to talk, privately, right now." "I don't think we have anything private to discuss anymore," I said. "After all, you've been sharing everything with Damien here." That's when Amanda made her fatal mistake. Instead of trying to defuse the situation, she went on the attack. "How dare you embarrass me like this?" she hissed, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet ballroom. "Making a scene at a charity gala with this woman." "This woman," Victoria said coolly, "is Damien's wife, though I suppose you've forgotten that detail." The crowd around us was growing larger. I spotted several board members from Crawford Digital, their faces grim as they watched their CEO's personal life implode in public. Damien grabbed Victoria's arm, his composure finally cracking completely. "We're leaving, now." "Take your hands off me," Victoria said, her voice deadly quiet. "You lost the right to touch me when you started touching your employees." The gasps from the crowd were audible now. Helen Wakefield was openly recording video on her phone. Two board members were whispering urgently to each other, their expressions suggesting emergency meetings in the very near future. What followed was exactly as Victoria had predicted. The fallout was swift, brutal, and comprehensive. Helen Wakefield's article ran 3 days later, detailing not just the affair, but the financial irregularities that Victoria's investigation had uncovered. The Crawford Digital Board called an emergency meeting within a week. Damien was forced to resign within 10 days, facing both civil and criminal charges for misappropriation of corporate funds. The company survived, barely, under new leadership, but Damien's reputation was destroyed beyond repair. Amanda was terminated from her marketing director position, ostensibly for performance issues. But everyone knew the real reason. Her industry reputation was equally damaged, making it difficult for her to find comparable work. 8 months later, both divorces were finalized. Amanda received minimal alimony and no stake in our house, which I sold to start fresh. Damien lost 40% of his assets and faced ongoing legal battles. Victoria and I moved to a neighboring city where she opened a cybersecurity consulting firm, and I joined her as technical director. We combined my network security expertise with her business acumen and created something neither of us could have built alone. We spent our evenings on the deck of our new house, talking about how different our lives might have been if we'd never discovered the affair. But we always came back to the same conclusion. We probably would have found each other eventually anyway, just perhaps not as dramatically. "She's amazing," I told Fletcher one evening when he visited our new city. We were sitting at a local tavern that reminded me of Murphy's, watching Victoria charm the other patrons with stories about art fraud prevention. Fletcher raised his glass. "To second chances and better choices." "To justice served and genuine partnership," I replied, and meant every word.